Hello again, everyone. This week in GIS-220, we're working on exercise 2, and I thought I'd put together a little video kind of demonstrating how you might approach this from my own perspective here. But I posted it earlier in the week because I wanted you to try working on it on your own. As you advance in your GIS capabilities, and we're now in these 200 level classes, you'll be expected to apply some of the material that you've learned in previous classes in this class. So I'm trying not to give away everything and walk you through it all up front. I'd rather get you working on it on your own. And then on some of these, especially these earlier exercises, I'll try to post a video as I have time and am able to that does do a demonstration of it, just in case you are struggling with it. And I also know and realize that there are 2 or 3 of you that have not had the fall classes yet. So that's the reason I put this together, and hopefully it will help. In our weekly summary of activities this week, I have some notes for you on the exercise, and I've got those up on the screen for you now. And just to kind of highlight some of the notes here. Again, you're kind of applying here things that you've learned previously. A lot of it on the first exercise, and actually in some of the stuff we've been doing in this class would probably be enough to get you through most of this as well. But what I did is I found an article a while ago in an ARC User 2003 edition. And I thought it was really good. And back then, and to this day, they're still doing some, but it seemed like there was a spell where the ARC User magazines were really putting out a lot of good tutorials, good examples. And so I try to use a few of those. But I mention that because you might want to subscribe on your own as well to this ARC User magazine if you haven't. And you can actually, I believe you can actually get them for free online as well. It's a great resource full of real interesting articles, sometimes an occasional tutorial, and they cover a broad spectrum of the ARC products. And another thing you might want to use is the ARC News, more of a larger format, kind of newspaper type magazine that ESRI puts out. And I believe those are also posted online. And I'm looking through, as we speak, I'm looking through the current edition that I just got this week, and they've got some really nice articles in there, and I encourage you to check it out. So just wanted to mention that. As you look through the notes here, I just tried to highlight a few things that I thought would be more likely to trip you up. And so I wanted to highlight some things to keep in mind. And, first, when you're looking at this article that I posted, the PDF on Taming the Tiger, which is this exercise, you will want to read through it and kind of get a feel for what they're accomplishing there. And so do that first, and then note that we're going to use the 2000 ESRI site that we've been using in class. The site that they use in the article is no longer available. And there's a few other things that's no longer available as well with them. And because the article it's referring to a place in California, I thought you might find it more of interest to pick a place closer to home or a place you're interested in getting data on. And so you could substitute any county for this exercise. And you'll want to use your GIS-220 working folder. And other than that, you can follow the folder structure that the author uses. I like that they do try to keep things organized in here, and he directs you to create several folders for organizing your work. And the other thing to note, though I don't think it appeared much from the article, I think it all looks pretty much the same, but they are using the older version of ArcGIS in this article. Though again, I don't think there's many places where that is an issue for us. And then there was a point in there where they referred to a CFCC table, and I've provided you with that in our download in an Excel file. They're talking about it in a DVF format. So that's you'll want to download that. And we've done the table joins in the fall classes, but again, I knew a few of you were new, and so I thought you might appreciate having access to a video that demonstrated principles behind it, and I've got some information from our fall class posted as well, but I've found this video on YouTube that I thought was really good on how to join data tables to data layers in ArcMap 10. And it's relatively short video, and they use Canadian census data, but it looks like it's formatted real similar to our census data here. And I thought in that video it was really nice that they also pointed out a potential issue you can run into when you join tables is that sometimes the field types will be different. And I don't think that applies to us here, but it very well might later in the semester. And so I thought it was nice that that they covered that, and they showed you a technique that you could use to basically create a new field and then copy the data, create a new field and set it to the type you want, so that it matches the field and type that you're going to join it to, and then you can copy over the data from the different field type into this new field and do your join that way. And again, I don't think it's an issue in this case, but we have run into it before when we've downloaded some of the raw census data directly from the census. We've run into issues where some of it is numeric format and some of it is string. And when you get two different types like that, it can create an issue on doing your join. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the article now. And in the article, again, called Taming Tiger Data, and what they're trying to simulate here is conditions that you might run into if you're at a fire department and you're needing to get some current data on the population in the area that you represent. And I thought it was interesting how they point out that in the good old days, they relied on just professional credibility, they quoted, which, everybody knew each other, and you were sort of trusted to have instincts that would get you through. You didn't have to rely on data as much. You had a lot of information in your head, and people were assumed could process that data and make decisions. And in today's world, things are very different, and we have to have documentation, data to support our decisions. That's more hard data, so to speak. And so they were trying to create a realistic scenario for what you might run into today in a fire department in a community. So the first thing that he has you do, which I think is really nice, is go through and set up your directories that you're going to use for storing your data and the data that you're going to process and so forth. And like I said, you'll want to make sure to create these directories inside a working folder on your GIS-220 folder. So let's do that first. Let me switch over to that view. Now you'll note that I've used, I've got our GIS-220 folder here on my C drive, and hopefully you've already done this and are following this for the exercises. It's pretty important because that way your project MXD files will open correctly on my end as well. So if you follow the same folder structure, and if you happen to use two computers, then you'll appreciate the need for this, because if you use the same folder structure on both computers, you can pretty much work on one computer and just copy your files and then paste them onto another computer, and everything should open correctly without getting the red exclamation marks. So you want to keep that standard folder structure, and it also helps to keep your separate your classes separate that you might be taking. So you can see here I've got a GIS-211, a 210, a 110, and so forth. So in our 220 folder, which I'm calling our main folder for the class, then we're going to create a working folder, which again you probably already have. We call it Class EX2. And inside there, I've downloaded from our Momentum site the cfcc.xls file. And I'm just going to leave it parked there for now. And we may move it a little later, we may not. I'm just going to leave it there for the moment. And I'm going to go ahead and follow the article over here now, which I've tried to put on the right side of the page here so you can see them both at the same time. And the author is suggesting that you use ArcCatalog to correct these folders with. And so you could technically do this right here in Windows Explorer, which is what I'm using here on the left side. But since we're going to be using ArcCatalog anyway to look at our projections and so forth, and to be consistent with the article, I'm going to go ahead and start up ArcCatalog, and we'll just use ArcCatalog to make our directories. So here I've opened ArcCatalog, and I'm going to leave it reduce a little bit in size so again we can see the article over here. And I'm going to go ahead and route over to my folder that we created in the GIS-220. And we want Class Exercise 2. And it tells us in Art Catalog to create a new directory named SLO Tiger. So we'll do that. And the way I can do that is there's always more than one way to do this. But one way is you can click in the window over here on the right side once you've selected the Class EX2 on the left side, and you can click on New and click on Folder, and it will pop it in there for you, and you can give it whatever name you like. We'll call it SLO TIGER. And then under, and notice how they've got the little directory tree here, which is handy. You can see under the SLO Tiger, they're creating these other folders. So I'm going to double click on that to go inside that folder. And I'll right click again, new in folder, and we'll create SHP files, and we'll create zip files. And inside each one of those, they create a lat long 83. And this is just their way of separating by projection information. I like to do this myself a lot as well because oftentimes I'm working with data in a given project from a variety of different projections, and it's a good way to separate and organize the data so that at a glance you know which projection is being used for that data. You could do it without, I mean, this is not required. You could do this without having that folder, but I thought it was kind of a neat idea, and we'll just keep it here. So we'll do lat long 83 there. And I'm just going to copy this to save typing it again. So I'll show you a few shortcuts this way as well. And then I'll click on the zip files, and then I'll paste that in there. Since it was an empty folder, I didn't have any data to go with it, so it keeps me from having to type as much. So now we've got our folder structure set up, and we can bounce back out here to the root of the Class EX2 working folder, and you can see how we've set that up. We can go into the SLO Tiger, and I can expand over here on the left side the tree for those files that we created, and you can see it matches. If you look at this area of the screen here, then it matches what they have over here. The only difference is, again, we've got this all couched under our GIS-220 main working folder there on the C drive. And the article, if we move along in the article, we see it talks a little bit about what the Tiger 2000 data represents, the types of features that are available, and so forth. And he mentions the CFCC table, which stands for Census Feature Class Codes, which is really handy for getting some descriptive information to go along with those CFCC codes that many of you have probably wondered about for a while now, because we've seen them in some of our data we used last fall as well, and we didn't really talk about it much. But it's basically a descriptive code that goes along with the features of a given data type that comes from the census. You know, the census has created this, and you can get a textual description to go with that, which is really handy because it explains kind of what you're looking at a little better. You know, for example, you might have stream data, and it usually, I believe, the CFCC code begins with an H for that data, and you'll have a lot of different codes, and when you get to looking at it, you find out that some of it might be intermittent streams or a river or a creek or so forth. And so it helps you to better understand and better classify your data. You can change your symbology, for example, to reflect the different types of categories you have in your attribute table. And then they create the directories that we've already created, and they bounce you to this site here, which is the one like I was telling you, is not the one we want to use any longer. Instead, we'll use the site that we've been using from ESRI to get our census data, and that's this site here. This is the home page. I think the link I gave you bounces you directly to the download site which used to be all they had, by the way, which was a little frustrating because you didn't have any metadata with it. And at least by creating this home page, we now have information letting us know that our coordinates are in NAD 83 for most of the country. They still use the NAD 27 in Alaska and some of the old Hawaii datum data. But most of the country is using NAD 83, and it's geographic, so you'll want to remember that. And so we can bounce over to the download page from there, which is, I think, the link I gave you takes you directly to this site. And for my example, I guess I'm just going to use my county where I live. So I'm going to use Cumberland County in Tennessee. So let's scroll over to Tennessee. And pick Cumberland County. And I'm going to minimize this page so I can show you the article at the same time we're looking at the page here to make sure we get the right layers that we need. And let's scroll over here and see what those are. And you can ignore this part about redistricting data. That was what was available then. And remember, we've got some redistricting attribute data down at the bottom of this page that we've used. We've got the public law, the PL 94, I believe it is, or the SF1, and I've always instructed you to use the SF1 because it's more recent data. The PL 94 data is what the Census Bureau puts out initially to satisfy their legal requirements to provide the Congresses in the various states, the legislatures and stuff, with their initial population count information. And then as they get more completed information from the census put together, they put it out in what we call the summary file tables in the SF1. And that's what we're using for attribute data. And then this top part, remember, is basically vector data, which is your actual Tiger files, which is available in a whole variety of different scales of resolution and for different features and so forth. The Census Bureau puts this together, and they assemble this from a whole variety of sources, but a lot of it coming from the USGS and some of the data that we've used previously, such as the DLG data and things like that. And they put together their own data set from these variety of data sources. And over time, they've refined it, and they're getting it better and better in terms of the quality. You may remember that we've mentioned earlier that some of the quality in the Tiger data may not be as precise as the DLG data, but it's getting better and better over time. So it's pretty good. And remember, there's a whole variety of hierarchies that this data is available in. And so that's something you want to keep in mind as you work with this data set. In other words, you've got the county level data, you've got state level data, and within the county you've got tracts, block groups, and blocks. And so all of that vector data is available here in the top part of the download site, and then the bottom part, a lot of the attribute data is available for those various levels of resolution from state down to the block. And again, it's for the PL94 and the SF1. Just ignore the PL94 for now. I don't think you'll have a need to use that. We'll use the summary file, the SF1 information. And also note that these are statewide layers down here at the bottom. The information in the attribute data here, if you're going to get more than one county, you only have to download this file once as long as it's within the same state, because it covers, for whatever resolution you're getting, it covers the entire state at that level of resolution. Whereas the top part of this download page is only for the county of interest. So we're working with Cumberland County, and that's what this will be available for here. And if we look at item 4 here, it tells us to go to figure 1 to decide which layers we're going to download out of this larger set. So let's do that. We'll scroll down and go over to table 1 on the next page. And let me see if I can blow that up a little bit here where you can see it a little better. And these are the files that you want to download from the list. So let's just go through and check those off. And remember, I talked earlier about the abbreviations that are embedded within those files. And when you download any of this data, you'll get a README file with it, and that README file contains a nice master list you might want to print out of all of these codes and what they stand for. So let's go ahead and we'll find the census blocks for 2000. We'll check that, and we'll check county. And I'll just work through the list here, and I'll pause the video a minute while I check them all off. Okay, I've checked the boxes here and got that information. And for now, we're not actually going to get population data itself, which was in the summary files. We could do that if we wanted to, and I think it would have been a good addition to this exercise to do that. But for now, let's just follow what they're doing, and we'll get the Tiger data files to start with, and we'll work from there. So we've made our selections over here, and let's go ahead and go to the bottom and proceed to download button, and that will pop up this page letting us know our file is ready. And again, what ESRI does is it zips all that data into one file for you, and that way you're only downloading one file. So we'll click the download button, and I'm using Internet Explorer here. So if you're using like Firefox, it may look a little different at this point. But and interesting enough, by the way, if you notice the address where it's downloading it from, that geography network still does exist out there, but it's just organized differently, and it's not like it not set up the way it used to be, but they still have that address where this data is coming from. So we'll go ahead and save that, and I'm going to tell it to save as, and we will route it over to our folder that we created, Class Exercise 2. And in the article, they ask you to save it in the SOT Tiger zip files, lat-long 83 subfolder. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be a kind of our archive folder that I've mentioned. You hear me mention a lot of times about how you might want to create an archive folder. So you have the original copy of your data, and setting that folder separate from your actual working folder is safer, and it also makes it easier when you zip things up and turn them in, so you're not turning in the archive data with it as well, which would increase the size of your upload a lot. So that's saved it already. It's pretty fast, and let's take a look at what we got. So if we switch over to our Windows Explorer, I like to use Windows Explorer for doing things like this. We can do it in Art Catalog as well, but to me, I'm so used to Windows Explorer that I'm sort of biased, and I like to use it a lot. But I'll go in there, and I see I've got the data here, and I'm going to go ahead and unzip that data while I'm there. And since I'm using Windows Explorer, I'm using WinZip, and 7-zip does the same thing. It recognizes it as associated with that file type. So I can simply right-click on that file and click on the little WinZip and say extract to, and extract it to here. And that way I don't have to type in a path and everything about where I want to unzip it to. Now, like we've done before, you'll notice that it unzips into multiple zipped files. And for each of the file that we downloaded, ESRI basically zipped up that data, which contains sometimes 3, 4, or 5 files for each one of those shapefile Tiger layers. So remember, a shapefile again always contains several files that goes with that shapefile. And a nice thing about WinZip, and this may just be a Windows thing, but I can highlight or let my mouse set over top of any one of those zip files, and it gives me a little preview of what's in it. And you can see indeed there are 3 files in this layer here, and there's a shapefile, a .shp. There's a dbf file, which is my attribute table again, and a shx file, which is a type of indexing file they use for shape files. And remember your name that you've got embedded in these names is that code we've mentioned earlier, and then the number here again. Remember the 47035. The 47 part stands for Tennessee. That's a FIPS code, F-I-P-S, a FIPS code. And the author mentions this a little bit in the article in here, and he tells you a little bit about the FIPS codes. And basically, it's a census way of helping to organize the massive amounts of data they have. The 035 part of that number is for Cumberland County. And so you can tell once you've worked with data for a given county, you'll at a glance recognize when you see that number, you'll know which state and county that data layer goes with, and from the abbreviation, you'll know what layer type it is as well. So it's kind of handy. And so let's go ahead and we'll copy. I'm going to copy the files that I unzipped, and I'm going to paste them. I'm going to actually cut them out of here since I've got my original up here at the top. I'll leave that in there. I'm going to cut these out of this zip file folder, and I'm going to go ahead and put them over into to the other folder that we made. And we'll put that into the shape files and into that subfolder there. And I'm going to right click and paste those files in there. So we still have our original archive safe and sound back out in their zip folder. And here we've got the files that we downloaded, and I'm going to unzip those. I could go through them one at a time unzipping them, but if I unhighlight the README file, while these are all highlighted, I'm just going to hold my control key down and click on the README file, which basically unhighlights that one. And then while my mouse is on top of any of the files that are highlighted, I'll right click and then I'll say WinZip, and we'll extract to here. And what that will do is unzip all of the files at once, so I don't have to go through and unzip them one by one, which saves some time in the long run. And once those have unzipped, while everything is highlighted up here in the zip files, just to avoid redundancy, I'm going to delete those while they're still highlighted, hit my delete button and enter for yes, and that cleanly takes away the redundant data that we had in there. Since we had it zipped up and the original, and we still had our archive zipped up back in the archive folder, we could always get back to those zip files again by pulling that out of the archive folder if we needed to. So this saves us some space in our project, and if you hear me occasionally refer to keeping your project clean and things like that, that's what I'm talking about, is taking redundant data out of your project file while at the same time keeping an archive folder nice, safe and sound somewhere else. So here's our data sets that we've got to work with, and roughly 3 files per layer, so there's quite a few individual files in here, which is partly why I don't ask you to submit all of this to the Dropbox. In the end, I'll ask that you just take a snapshot and send me your MXD file. You probably could upload these and it would not exceed the size if you zipped them up, but I thought it would be easier to stick with the way we've done things in other classes, where you just upload the zip or the MXD and a snapshot for me. Now there may be times where I'll ask you to submit all of your files, just depending on the size and so forth, but this is not one of them. And again, the README file is in there. If you want to take a look at that, you can open that. And again, you can see that that has the codes on it once it opens here. There we go. Let me close or download that completed earlier. And in here, you can think of this as metadata, but I don't think you'll find the projection information in here. It's still some metadata, though, that explains what these data files are about. But you needed that information on the first page to know how to set up your projections, which we'll do next. But again, there's all the abbreviations for each of the layer names. So now let's go back into Art Catalog and we'll take a look at our projections. So in Art Catalog, we should have our data here now in our SHP files. I'm going to highlight those and I'm going to close the zip file. Now I had Art, excuse me, I had Art Catalog open already while I was working in Windows Explorer, and I didn't close it from our earlier session. So don't panic when you click on it and you don't see any files over there. It's just because it's not been refreshed. And we can easily refresh by going up here to the file menu, and let's see, I'm sorry, it's not the file menu. They keep moving it around on me. Okay, it's under the view. So we go to view and refresh, and there our files pop up. And ESRI recognizes the file types. As you all know by now, you've got you can see what you've got from Polygon by the little icon beside the file. You've got polygons, lines, and a 1-point file in there. So I'm going to expand those here on the left side, and I'm going to select the first one. And as you know, probably by now, you can always do a preview of that if you like by clicking on the Preview tab, and it will preview the contents of that file. And that's sometimes handy to do when you're dealing with a file for the first time that you haven't worked with, before and you're wanting to explore a little bit about what it is, you can go through these and click on the various files and they'll pop up. After the first one takes a little delay, the other ones pop up pretty quickly. And so, when you've got this one without your list that you looked at in the README file, you might think you don't know if this is string